At 0412, under a dim Arctic sky, Elenia Bay breathed cold and still, until a motion tore across the radar scopes like a cut. Without warning, dozens of Ukrainian reconnaissance drones and fast, sea-skimming USVs surged in from multiple bearings, their approach a ragged chorus of metal and intent. They masked the deeper roar of loitering munitions and kamikaze UAVs that probed every defensive seam. Offshore, Yasin-class subs and Admiral Gorshkov frigates slammed to battle stations, while the carrier Admiral Kuznetsov loomed like a mobile shield. This was not a routine raid. It was the opening blow of a multi-axis strike meant to cripple Russia's northern submarine hub.
Don't take your eyes off the screen until the secret is revealed. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. Seconds after the opening strikes, the fight folded into a precise, surgical phase of sensing and denial. Long-endurance reconnaissance drones and fingertip USV formations fanned out across the bay, skimming barely a mile apart to sweep every blind spot. Thermal feeds and real-time imagery flooded a central nexus where mission planners remapped threats by the minute, each new feed a pulse and the operation's beating heart. Then, the electronic curtain unfurled.
Shipboard and truck-mounted jammers pumped adaptive noise across key bands, creating an invisible fog that erased clean radar returns and forced coastal air defenses to chase ghosts. Radar operators toggled modes, spun up power, shortened scan arcs. Every desperate tweak handed the attackers fresh windows. Above the chaos, NATO escort fighters held high-altitude overwatch, not to strike, but to dominate the air picture. Their presence tied up Russian combat air patrols and denied reinforcements safe ingress. Through that escorted corridor moved logistics flights and unarmed support helicopters, pushing fuel, medical supplies, and replacement sensors into forward nodes, closing the loop between reconnaissance and action. Tactically, it was economy of force. Deny the defender a coherent picture, and you deny him effective response. The intent in this phase was not mass destruction, but compression. Shrink the enemy's decision cycle until command jittered and slowed, and carve a predictable lane for the strikes to follow. By the time the fog thinned in places, the attackers already had their next moves cued, bearings down to degrees, windows measured in heartbeats. As the electronic fog tightened, the battle dropped to the waterline, a choreography of small, fast platforms and precision violence designed to stretch a harbor's defenses until their seams showed. Waves of crewless USVs punched through the outer wake, each no bigger than a fishing skiff and moving at tens of knots. They darted between sensor shadows and drew fire. Their purpose was not spectacular destruction, but attrition of awareness. Strike a radar mast here, jam a mooring light there, force defenders to light sectors they preferred to keep dark.
Kamikaze drones and FPV swarms moved in tight tandem with the USVs. From 1,000 feet above, loitering kamikazes dove in clicked arcs toward coastal gun emplacements and shore radars, while tiny FPV boats, guided by real-time feeds, slammed into fuel lines and exposed antenna racks. Each micro-attack compelled a response. Each response thinned the curtain of coordination. Where once a single command node could watch a peer, now multiple tiny crises demanded separate crews and separate radios, fracturing the defenders' unity of effort.
Offshore, Admiral Gorshkov and Yasin-class units strove to restore order. Missile tubes spun toward threat arcs, decoys trailed, close-in weapon systems tracked fast, small contacts. But a cruel dilemma emerged. To concentrate on USV swarms was to expose channels for friendly submarines. To protect subs exposed the pier. It became a classic slice and distract campaign. Dozens of small impacts, each modest alone, combined to erode the base's ability to marshal a coordinated counterstroke. Beneath the mechanical cacophony, a quieter human rhythm pulsed. Forward rescue teams and unmanned medevac USVs waited on prearranged bearings to pick up wounded sailors and tow burned hulks from choke points. A deliberate attempt to keep civilian and non-combatant harm from turning tactical victory into moral defeat. By the time the smoke thinned, Olenja Bay's defenses were not shattered by a single overwhelming blow, but by 1,000 small cuts. A distributed campaign leaving the enemy less whole, far less certain. With the coastal sensors scattered and gunners chasing decoys, the assault shifted skyward. From staging airfields more than 200 miles to the southwest, mixed packages of F-16s and Allied strike fighters streamed toward the target on staggered bearings, each wave masked by low-level sea clutter and the lingering electronic fog. Their first runs were harassment, afterburners flaring as they slashed across the bay near supersonic, forcing every surviving gun and missile battery to lock and fire, burning through precious ammunition. Moments later came the real payloads, launched from well outside Russian interceptor range, precision-guided cruise missiles arcing in at high subsonic speeds, their inertial guidance tied to satellite updates. One by one, they struck pre-mapped targets, buried fuel depots that fed submarine patrols, hardened weapons bunkers near the pier, service wharves.
The strikes aimed at infrastructure, not personnel, aimed to choke the system that allowed Russia's undersea fleet to sortie. Fireballs leapt as secondary explosions rolled through fuel tanks, briefly turning the fjord into a ring of flame. The Russian Navy fought to blunt the onslaught. Admiral Kuznetsov surged from holding lines, launching Su-33 fighters to contest the air, while Yasen-class escorts fired Yakunt SSN-26 supersonic missiles in counter-battery roles. Close-in weapon systems spat 30mm streams, shredding some drones and missiles, but every intercept drained resources away from protecting the subsurface exits.
When the strike waves wheeled south to refuel, the calculus had shifted. Olenja Bay's submarine operations were temporarily paralyzed, its fueling grid fractured, its command rhythm broken. The fight had become a duel between airborne agility and armored maritime defense. And for now, air had seized the initiative. Into brutal close quarters where every yard of water mattered. As Arctic dusk bled into night, small strike USVs knifed through gaps left by earlier hits, barely pickup-sized, racing at 40 knots. FPV swarms, no bigger than hobby drones but loaded with shaped charges, skated inches above the chop, diving at exposed radar masts and weapon mounts. Their plunges splintered decks and threw blinding sprays. Yasen-class and Admiral Gorshkov crews fought back with everything at hand. CIWS ripped approach lanes with walls of 30mm fire, while deck gunners fired 12.7mm bursts, trying to shred incoming waves. The air filled with tracer arcs and ricochet sings, but sheer attacker numbers and erratic maneuvers kept defensive radars saturated. For every USV destroyed, another slipped inside the ring, forcing damage control teams to race from hatch to hatch to contain fires and flooding.
Inside the harbor, sailors fought to keep critical submarines sealed and ready for tow. Damage control parties battled compartment fires with seawater pumps and portable extinguishers, while engineers jury-rigged power through twisted cables to keep ballast systems alive. Robot minesweepers deployed from Ukrainian support craft swept key lanes to ensure safe passage for rescue boats. On shore, combat engineers and medics pushed forward behind armored ambulances, carving emergency corridors through rubble and twisted pier segments, feeding wounded Russian and Ukrainian sailors to triage barges waiting offshore. The firefight therefore carried a double rhythm: harsh mechanical urgency and a quieter, stubborn effort to save lives.
By midnight, Olenja Bay had become a grinding contest of endurance and coordination, where the side that kept communications intact and kept damaged crews moving would decide who held the water by dawn.
Then, both commands unleashed their heaviest electronic warfare assets. Powerful shipborne jammers and truck-mounted arrays flooded the spectrum from VHF to Q-band with shifting noise and false echo.
Then both commands unleashed their heaviest electronic warfare assets. Powerful shipborne jammers and truck-mounted arrays flooded the spectrum from VHF to Q-band with shifting noise and false echoes. Control signals broke mid-sentence. Secure voice channels dissolved into static. On tactical screens, phantom contacts winked in and out, destroyers in empty water, periscopes where none existed. Operators on both sides hunted ghosts while trying to protect real convoys still maneuvering through the bay.
Ukraine sieged that confusion. Long-range recon drones circling at 25,000 feet switched to passive mode, silently relaying encrypted images through laser links immune to most jamming. Cyber teams injected crafted decoys into Russian networks, broadcasting false damage reports and bogus submarine departure times. Each misleading packet forced Russian commanders to reroute scarce assets and verify phantom signals, compounding delays at the precise moment they needed coherence. Russia countered from inland bunkers and mobile relays across the Kola Peninsula. Electronic countermeasures attempted to peel away the fog. Yasin-class submarines slipped to deep-water shelves, using low-frequency bursts to triangulate real drone carriers, while Admiral Gorshkov escorts pulsed radar sweeps meant to collapse the illusion of phantom fleets. The bay became a living chessboard of invisible moves and countermoves. Amid the electromagnetic turbulence, NATO humanitarian corridors opened like hidden doors on agreed frequencies. Medical flights and rescue hovercraft marked safe lanes for civilian fishermen and wounded sailors, Russian and Ukrainian alike, to exit the combat zone. Unarmed NATO support ships arrived with surgical teams, portable desalination units, and fire suppression gear, allowing both sides to treat casualties and clear burning piers without fear.
This command phase was less about explosive power and more about tempo. Turn information itself into a weapon, spread selective truths, and fabricate convincing fictions to stretch the adversary's decision cycle. Ukraine and its partners made defenders chase mirages. That, in turn, shifted the logistical burden. Russia had to guard civilian lanes and verify every sensor reading, while Ukraine conserved strength for strikes yet to come. This center of gravity moved from steel and ordnance to data and deception, setting the stage for the campaign's final push.
When the climax arrived, every element synchronized. Swarms of drones and USVs pressed in from multiple bearings, while high-cover F-16s dove to release precision munitions. Offshore fire support ships lobbed guided shells, and EW teams blanketed Russian command circuits with fresh bursts of interference. Their combined aim was surgical but decisive. Fuel farms, submarine berths, and hardened command nodes that tied Aleniat Bay to the Northern Fleet. Russian commanders faced stark choices. Some ordered Yasin-class submarines to slip into deeper fjords under emergency ballast. Others argued to hold the pier. Every hesitation risked trapping crews beneath collapsing infrastructure. Brief, isolated ceasefires formed like white scars. Ukrainian rescue craft and NATO medical boats used those fragile windows to evacuate wounded sailors, friend and foe alike, and guide nearby civilians to protected coves. For tense hours, the harbor became a mosaic of explosions and rescue flares. Warships trading salvos beside stretcher teams guiding casualties across makeshift gangways. By first light, command cables lay severed, and the submarine pens were silent. Victory here was not only measured in destroyed steel, but in lives deliberately spared amidst the storm.
Alenia Bay fell silent, with submarine departures crippled, fuel depots gutted, and patrol cycles broken. Strategically, the core objective was accomplished. Moscow now had to scatter its Yasin-class subs, Admiral Gorshkov frigates, and even the maintenance of Admiral Kuznetsov across wider Arctic waters, diluting its undersea power. Yet a hard question remains. Can any northern base still be called secure? Or will Russia answer with new tactics and heavier air defenses?
The operation proved a truth. Layered coordination, drones, USVs, air, naval, and electronic warfare can rewrite a battlefield. And when disciplined humanitarian measures accompany kinetic success, military victories can be converted to lasting legitimacy.
This was Military Secret Zone, where the shadows of war are revealed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The battlefield holds many secrets, and here we unveil them.